Technical Committee meeting for September 14th, 2016. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 1-year anniversary of the merger of IO.js and Node.js. So if you see someone who worked on either or both of those projects, give them a high five today. Let's start with stand up, and first would be Bradley.
Not too much going on. Synced up with various people about trying to understand what the differences between the two module systems for ES modules are. Got a couple of proposals to review from Chris Dickinson, and Jeremiah has one out on the EP. Other than that, not too much going on. Yep.
Next would be Ben, but he, I don't believe, is here. So after that, it is Nikita.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you sort of.
Oh, okay. So nothing much this week. I almost skipped it. I did some private ecosystem things a bit though, but nothing that I should mention here. So next is Ivan.
I've commented on a few issues and PRs, not much. It's sick kids. Next is Jeremiah.
I've been working on the v6.6.0 release, and that should be out today, but I'm running into some stuff on SitGem, and I wasn't 100% sure that everything that went into it would necessarily pass it, or I saw some stuff that looked like it maybe, I don't know, looked a little bit suspicious as to like could maybe cause issues. I don't know. And I've also been involved in ES modules discussions, miscellaneous PRs issues review, and also been doing some async hook review / thinking with Trevor Norris to get it out the door. And the next person would be Josh Gavant.
Yeah. So a little bit with the diagnostics working group, trying to get together a meeting for next week. But with the interactive this week, haven't gotten much reply there, so I might have to bump it. And then just general issues and PRs in a couple places, and was on discussing modules a little bit with Bradley and a couple other people. Next is Julian.
I've been reviewing a couple of timers PR from Jeremiah and investigating and fixing a few libuv bugs on SmartOS. And I also read the async hooks EP from Trevor. Next is Brian.
Okay, so I've mostly been taking another stab at the JavaScript DNS client and trying to see if I can take different avenues for trying to get performance to be close to C Aries and the system resolver, and I think I'm getting pretty close now with a few optimizations, but still not quite there. Other than that, just the normal reviewing PRs and issues. Next is Rod.
I've had pretty uneventful week. It's been consumed with travel and administrative stuff with the board, TSC, other meetings, etc. Nothing really exciting to report. Seth.
Hey guys, just working on finishing up the V8 inspector migration. It's now in the V8 tree and it builds, and so we're almost ready to declare that migration done. And there's some continued discussion on the micro task queue introspection APIs on the V8 side. On the tracker, I've listed the issue in the doc, and so I think things are going along well there. That's all for me. Next up is Trevor Norris.
Hey, Seth, can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
When you say V8 inspector is almost done, is that just the V8 inspector part of it, or also the inspector protocol part?
This is just the
everything.
migration. I believe so, but let me follow up with you offline about that.
Okay. I'm just kind of I'm kind of wondering if everything will be done for 5.4, or if
That's
there'll
a good
still be a
question.
little left to do.
I don't know if we're going to be able to turn it on for 5.4.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd like to, but it's gonna be cutting it close.
You're up, Trevor.
All right, finished. So I finished the AC. Well, it wasn't 100% complete, but it was really close to 100% completion to follow the EP as it was, and benchmarking showed that it was slaughtering performance even if they weren't being used. And so I cut scope, and I've updated the EP. I did all this yesterday. I cut scope, updated the EP, and then also updated the PR. I left the commit separate so you can see what it was and what it is now, so that it won't hinder performance. It still has a minor performance hit. Almost all of it comes from needing to track process NextClick. We just use it all over the place. I mean, if you look at the PR, I show an async stack, just receiving and responding to a single HTTP request adds another 8 or 10 NextClick calls, and when each of those, even if they're not being tracked, they still need to receive new IDs. Just those minor little calls add up really fast, especially when you're trying to do 35,000 requests per second. But yeah, it's up, it's for review, it can be used and tested and whatnot. I still need to write tests for it and get feedback. But Rich?
This week we welcomed 3 new collaborators. Not an Aardvark, who Anna Henningsen helped me onboard. iMyler, I hope I'm saying, well, I guess since they're GitHub names, there is perhaps no correct pronunciation, and Gibfon. And so that was fun. And we updated ESLint, which allowed us to remove one of our custom rules and use a built-in rule instead. A bunch of test PRs and doc PRs, and landing a bunch of contributions from first-time contributors. I think 4 of them or something over the weekend. And that is all. Did we miss anybody? Doesn't look like it. Super. So we only have one item on the public agenda this week, and I don't know that we actually need to discuss it, or if we just want to go ahead and take a vote. I see that. Go back, Poorvi. Okay, that's sorry. Yeah. Yes. So does anybody? I would like to move that we just simply vote on the EP. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about it before we do that?
There's one thing that Trevor has adjusted since discussion on GitHub, which was there was some desire to have hooks that you could start on a particular execution branch and stop on that same branch. Trevor, you're going to have to describe this, but you've taken away that functionality because of the performance hit. Do you want to describe what that was?
Yeah, basically, if you were to enable a hook and then run an asynchronous operation and then disable the hooks, any asynchronous operations that occurred within the time it was enabled and disabled the hooks are propagated along those asynchronous calls, and so even after the hook has been disabled, the callbacks will continue to be called And this way you could be selective about what was being listened to. And that feature, it was okay. I feel like I could have managed it, but honestly, the biggest hindrance is NextClick. I feel like that triples, that call alone triples the number of hooks and handles that need to be managed. And so I decided to cut scope and make it performant as possible, and we could consider adding that feature back in at a later date.
Fortunately for me, I only reread the EP this morning, so that was already, the change was already in place. I didn't know what the difference was until I looked at the most recent commit. But what was I going to? Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I started to leave like punctuation nits and stuff, and then I stopped myself, realizing that we really just need to vote on the content and not. Anyway, I'm wasting everyone's time here. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about with async hooks, or any questions they want to ask Trevor or anyone else? Okay, given that, the call for votes is now in the sidebar. If you are a CTC member, please indicate your vote.
Trevor, what did you do? What did you end up doing with the NextClick thing? Is that still something to sort out?
Oh, what do you mean? What did I do with it?
Just the overhead from it in general. Did we make any progress there?
Yeah, by cutting the features and by doing some code mingling, I was able to. It still has about a 2% overhead, even if the hooks are not being used. But that's a lot better than the 14% it was back when it still had to do like state propagation. So it's still not where I want it to be, but it's close enough where 99% of users wouldn't notice a difference.
Okay, so if, Trevor, is it safe to assume that you would like to vote for this EP? Cool. I think the only person who hasn't voted is Brian. Is that right? Hooray, hooray. Okay, so if I'm doing the math correctly, we have 7 votes in favor and 1 abstention, which again, if I'm doing the math correctly, we need two more votes in favor if this is to pass, or a whole bunch of abstentions. So I guess the only resolution is to put this information in the EP pull request and mention Node.js CTC to try to solicit more votes from people. Vote yes votes, no votes, or abstentions. So was that? I'm sorry. Was that Josh who said he'd do it?
No, it's Rod. I'll go and do
Rod.
that.
Okay,
I just
Rod.
wanted to note as well that in the side panel, I dropped a link to the pull request, which is pull request 8531, which goes along with this the EP. It's not, we're not voting on that pull request, but if you want to start looking at the code for the implementation, then we should note that is number 8531.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod, for taking the action item of putting the information in the pull request. So unless somebody has an absolute last minute addition to the public agenda, I think it's time to move on to Q&A from anybody watching the stream.
There are 2 people watching.
There are some GitHub changes that vanished recently. Perhaps we should discuss it sometime. For example, it now GitHub implements reviews, so we could change the process a bit or not. Perhaps we need just an issue for that to discuss that.
I think opening an issue for that would be a great idea. I think the ability to approve pull requests in the interface might enable us to make and automating the generation of reviewed by metadata, for example, very reliable. It's very exciting. No questions, Jeremiah?
William Capkley asks, live CTC meeting in Austin? I'm not sure how many of us will be down there, but
I'll be there.
I think more of us will probably be there than Netherlands, and it's a good time as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can do a slightly larger version of what we did at Node Summit, where those of us who were there gathered in a single room. And, or is the question like doing it in front of a live audience or something like that? I don't know how I feel about that.
Someone else, I feel like we've seen this person before, but I can't read their YouTube name, says, what's the status of VS6 modules? What's the team's personal opinions on that? I guess that should be probably to me. The status of VS6 modules is mostly kept up in the related EPs, which numbers I don't have, but it should be EP number 2. And the related pull requests now to that, the rewrite and or my other proposal. I believe there will be some of us and Bradley are going to be going down to a TC39 meeting in sometime this month.
Yeah.
And we have some materials prepared to talk more to them about some challenges we're facing there, which are mostly summarized in the related pull requests on to that EP. As for like personal opinions, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't really have any valid personal opinions on this anymore. So,
Well, since it asked specifically for personal opinions, and I love personal opinions, giving my own because I like to hear myself talk, I guess. I certainly hope that we can avoid the .m. Personally, I hope that we can work with TC39 and get alterations such that we can avoid the .mjs extension, but if that doesn't happen, the .mjs extension is not ideal, but it's I do believe that better than other options.
My personal opinion is that we are unfortunately trapped in a tough corner where TC39 has created a spec that has some technical problems for Node. We are having difficulty getting them to hear our concerns and make changes, and they think that the path forward is for us to make changes, and that's enough. But looking at the details, it seems to me that that's, if we do that, then we have to make some really tough breaking changes for users. So we're in a tough place. We have a lot of users out there that love the idea of modules. Unfortunately, that's based on existing transpiled versions, which are not actually spec compatible. So the thing that people love is not actually the thing that is spec'd and that we are being forced to implement. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But either way, we're in a really tough corner.
I am optimistic that's going to work out well, because I have a lot of faith in people like Bradley and Jeremiah.
One other thing to note is that no browsers are shipping this yet. I don't think it's ready to ship spec-wise or something yet. So, and regardless, V8 doesn't have it fully implemented, so there's no way we could ship it today, or probably even in like the next month or before V7 or whatever. Anyways, it'll take longer than that, no matter what.
Yep. Chakra's implementation is actually pretty close to done for the type equals module spec in the browser. But I mean, that would drastically change if we go to TC39 and that changes the specification, because then they will have to re-implement. So it's a little bit of a dance.
So to connect the two, oh, sorry, Nikita, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say that Edge has models in a preview release, I think.
Yeah, I think that's Chakra, right? So that would be Chakra's experimental browser support implementation.
So to connect the two questions that we've had, there is actually going to be a talk at Node Interactive Austin by Bradley on Wednesday, November 30th. So if you're very interested in modules, you really should turn up and have a listen to that and even chat to Bradley while you're there. And that happens to be at the same time as our CTC call. So I'm suspecting that a lot of CTC members probably won't make the call, but will maybe even be in that talk. So yeah, we might want to think about whether we even have a CTC call on that day.
One more reason to try to push as much as possible to asynchronous places like GitHub.
True.
Okay, unless somebody else has something else to add or there's another question, it's probably time to close this up and move on to the private segment. Are there any more questions, Jeremiah?
Not yet.
I'll just make one announcement for people listening and for the record, that the foundation has been conducting its voting for chair and vice chair, and the votes have come in for, where is it? Denise Cooper from PayPal renewed as chair, and Scott Hammond of Joyent renewed as vice chair. And that will be formalized at the board meeting this week. Secretary is still unfilled yet.
Thank you for that, Rod.
Okay, there's no more questions that I'm seeing. William said in... Okay, there's actually an issue for this live TSC/CTC meetings in Austin thing that's on the TSC repo. Is issue TSC 137. So that's just a note, but other than that, we don't have any questions.
Okay, cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for coming, CTC folks, and let's do it again next week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah.